Now, let me go ahead and rate, Lance said as he turned and grabbed the place. Fine, as long as you. One, they did. And I just. Hello, dears. Natalie, Locke here with episode 98 of Write the Story, where I give you a prompt in 10 words out of this book and share with you my outline and then drafting process. I do a slight bit of editing, but it's very minuscule. Like this time, I outlined and wrote the story last night, and I'm recording today. It kind of plays out that way when you have kids. Feel free to join me on this writing journey because I am going to give you the prompt in 10 words before I give you my outline, and you can pause the video right at that moment and write the story yourself. If it's your first time doing flash fiction, I recommend no time limit whatsoever. For myself, I sometimes take 10 minutes to outline, and then I sometimes take 30 minutes or an hour to write the story. Last night, it took me a while, but let's be honest, I was distracted by the TV. I was watching Whose Line Is It Anyway, feeling nostalgic, and it captivated my attention a few times. But I still got through the story, still wrote it, and I will be able to read it to you today. Let me go ahead and give you the prompt in 10 words for episode 98. The prompt is, parents solve a problem together. The words to include are rhinoceros, umbrella, announcement, petal, feather, fruit, placemat, sketch, wobble, boil. Now, in this story, I initially thought, what is the problem? What is something that parents would come together on? And I definitely thought, well, what if their son or daughter was in a bad relationship? But then I was like, well, who are they to judge? They don't know the person. And then I thought, okay, what if it's their first time meeting this person and they already have preconceived notions of them? And so in their mind, they're like, we have to break them up. And then I wanted it to unfold at the end that they don't. And I'll explain that in a little bit more. The three words that were the most problematic for me at the very end was petal, feather, and placemat with the outline. But I was able to use placemat sooner in the draft, so that worked out, and I kind of kept petal and feather as they originally intended, so maybe it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. But it's times like those that I'm glad I outline so that my draft goes a little smoother and I'm not feeling as lost. So I was thinking for announcement, it's ever since the announcement he was bringing someone, I did some online research. Meaning one of the parents was like, I am going to find out who this person is that my little boy is bringing home. And then the other parent is like, whoa, you didn't tell me? Yeah, and then they reply like, sorry to boil your nerves. So I was kind of happy with the play of boil there. I don't think I used it exactly like that, but I did kind of use it as a description of someone's emotions. I did keep to get a rough sketch of the new boo's character. That's how I use the word sketch. I originally put it as the parent going, oh, we'll dish the fruit. And it just, as unique as it is, it just didn't seem natural. So I ended up making it a fruit dish, fruit platter in the story. So it changed slightly from here. I did like this where the parent asked, all right, okay, is this new boo the significant other? Are they like the hold the umbrella type or what? And I thought that was a really nice moment and imagery of like someone holding an umbrella for you when you're dating. So I did put in here, even though it's not a word, I said, well, they're outdoorsy, but at least the kids have that in common. Just showing some strength between them. But I ended up leaving that out, and I kind of wish I put that back in, honestly. I might do that on a reattack with this story. And then the parent asks if there's anything wrong with this person. Have they had a wobble with the law? I initially said, do they wobble the line of morality? But that just, again, as unique as it is, it didn't feel natural. So I figured Wobble with the Law was unique enough, but still felt natural. It was kind of a good play, and you could get some imagery there. And then I was proud of this one, and I ended up shortening it a bit. It said, do they attack political discussions like a rhinoceros? Kind of that charging attitude. Like anytime, and I'm sure you've met people like this, where whenever politics are brought up, they are just like in it, arguing left and right, and a little abrasive probably. So I put that as a quality, but I put in the story saying, are they a political rhinoceros? Because I felt that that imagery conveyed that idea. Hopefully it came across. And at this point in my outline, I decided the two characters, the young couple, needed to enter the scene. So I had them arrive at the place, they walk in, and the new boo has flowers for the parents, but they ended up getting dropped and all the petals, so I finally used petals, fell to the floor. Oh, and for feather, I said that the new boo had a fedora with a feather in the brim, and that ended up staying. But the petals drop to the floor, and the person considers like, hey, I'll sweep it up, it's my fault or whatever. And so when they leave the room with one of the parents, the other parent, the nervous Nellie, as I would call them, has a chance to talk with their son. And they unfold that they raised a good kid. They have a good idea, a good head on their shoulders, and do their own research behind who they're dating, and the parents don't need to worry. Really, the only word that changed out of all 10 words was fruit, and it just went, instead of dish the fruit, it turned into an actual fruit platter that was ended up on the table. Placemat was clear of it was going to be placemats setting for lunch, dinner. I didn't even really pick a meal, but all that stayed the same, but fruit. So, not too shabby. Now, let me go ahead and read you my version of episode 98. Rick and Lance laid out placemats on the dining room table. Sam only told us about Jesse yesterday. That isn't enough time to find out who is coming to our house, Lance said as he turned to grab the plates next. Rick smirked. Don't worry, I did my own research. What? Lance placed all 4 plates on the table and put his hands on his hips. Rick sighed. I really just wanted you not to worry. I'm sorry, dear. I didn't want to bring you to a boil over this. Grabbing the plates again, Lance shook his head. Fine, as long as you spill the beans while you bring the fruit platter to the table. Is Jesse a hold the umbrella type or a political rhinoceros? Rick went to the kitchen and returned with a platter of cut fruit before speaking again. Well, I was just judging from tagged posts, tweets, and pictures, but they seem to have a very outgoing circle. Sam is in some pictures, but I can't tell when they started dating because most of the photos are group or candid photos and they are never right next to each other. They are online official, but there is not a start date showing an anniversary. Lance pursed his lips. Well, that doesn't tell us much. I mean, has Jesse had a wobble with the law? Lance started to aggressively place the forks and knives on the table. Rick walked around and placed his hands over Lance's. Sweetheart, they're on their way, and I know you'll ask all the right questions to give us a sketch of Jesse's character. Lance took a breath. Okay, you're right. Lance was cut off when they heard 2 car doors close. The worried pair locked eyes before making their way to the front door. They took a breath and waited for the doorbell to chime as the announcement of their visitors. Opening the door with smiles on their faces, they were greeted by the young couple. One they'd known since a baby, and the other only through their online presence. Meeting them in person, though, was a sight. Jesse wore a fedora with a feather in the brim, but held a full bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. Sam stepped over the threshold, embracing his fathers. Dads, this is my partner, Jesse, Sam said, turning back to the open door and gesturing for Jesse to come inside. Jesse smiled and passed the bottle of wine to Rick and the flowers to Lance. The flowers slipped from Lance's fingertips just as Jesse pulled away. Jesse tried to grab the flowers before they hit the ground, but ended up hitting the blossoms, knocking off some petals as they fell to the floor. Jessie's face instantly turned red. "I'm so sorry," they spat out before kneeling down to pick up the flowers in each petal. "Ah, don't worry," Rick said. "I'll go get the broom and dustpan." Jessie snapped up. "I'll come with you. I made the mess." The pair left the room. Lance and Sam shared a chuckle as Sam closed the front door. "Jessie was so nervous," Sam said. Lance waved the comment off. "I'm serious," Sam continued. "Hell, even I was. That's why it's taken me over a year to bring them to meet y'all. I know your private eye tendencies." Sam let out a laugh before continuing. "Hell, I did my own research into them for over 6 months before I got the nerve to ask them on a first date." Lance laughed too. "Oh, we're not that bad, but I'm glad you found someone you're comfortable enough to bring home." Jessie and Rick entered the living room with the broom and dustpan. Jessie insisted they should sweep up the mess. As they did, Rick locked eyes with Lance from behind Jessie and gave a thumbs up while pointing to Jess. Lance nodded, then walked over to stand beside Rick as Sam and Jess threw away the petals and put away the broom and dustpan. Lance whispered in Rick's ear, "We did good." I had a lot of fun with this story. I challenged myself in some ways where I had 3 male characters and one non-binary character, and I wanted to explore that more and learn how to write a non-binary character, and hopefully I conveyed that well enough. But I do believe now, thinking about it, that I should have included more about the looks. But then why would I single out my non-binary character's appearance when I didn't mention anyone else's? I mentioned the fedora, but that's honestly because I just needed to include a feather, so I was trying to figure out where. The other challenge I had was the ending. Originally, I had Rick pointing to Jessie and then giving a thumbs up, whereas then I had Lance point to Sam and Jessie and then giving a thumbs up. But I realized I wanted some verbal confirmation. I wanted Lance to say something or Rick to say something. And that's what we ended up with, where I wanted them to say we did good. For them to realize that they don't have to be so private eye tendencies, as I said earlier in their story. They don't have to do that. They raised a good kid, someone who is able to think for themselves and do their own research and determine if someone's good enough for them. And so really the problem that the parents ended up solving is themselves realizing that there wasn't a problem, that their kid's fine. And I kind of like that aspect of this story of kind of a creating a problem when there isn't one. Now, I'm not quite clear exactly what I need to work on with this story. I honestly don't know. But because I'm talking from points of view that I have no firsthand experience with, I mean, 2 gay men raising a child who's in a relationship with someone who's non-binary. I'm writing for a lot of different perspectives that I have no experience with, firsthand at least. And I think this story, the biggest thing that I would do before publishing is sensitivity readers. Absolutely. This is something that I would need to send out and have people review and make sure that I am not reinforcing stigmas, that I'm not playing into cliches or setting just ridiculous mindset. I absolutely would need sensitivity readers before publishing this story. I know that that's what I would need, and that's okay, that is what I need. If every single writer wrote from a perspective only they know, first off, we would have less writing because no one wants to put themselves out there on blast, that obviously. We may write ourselves into stories a little bit, but it's usually sprinkled over multiple characters, and we're okay. But I still really enjoyed this story. I still love these characters, and I hope that they came across developed enough for a flash fiction. And I still think it's a beautiful love story, not just a love story of a new love and an old love, but also a story of parents to children and children to parents. I think it was really beautiful. For my favorite line, I think it's because I had this idea, even in my outline, that the son has not brought this person to meet their family, even though they've been dating for a while. And at first, I thought 6 years. Then I was like, oh my God, that's actually a betrayal of trust. If it's taken you 6 years to admit you're in a relationship and even bring the person home, then I was like, okay, 3 years. Then I was like, oh, that's still a pretty tough one. But I think this works here. The line that lets you know all the nervousness and everything that's going on is when Sam says, "That's why it's taking me over a year to bring them to meet y'all." Now, yes, I let my southernness go in there and I actually used a word y'all, but I'm okay with it. I honestly, I can't think of any other words. Use guys or you all. It's not natural to me. I need to make it natural in case I'm writing other characters, but either way, it worked in here. But that line is the oh moment. And even the line after it, you know the kid knows his parents when he said, I know your private eye tendencies. And then later he admits to his own, where he says, hell, I did my own research into them for over 6 months before I got the nerve to ask them out on our first date. I like that entire setup. It is the moment where you realize the the kid knows his parents. The parents have instilled this know somebody before you date them mindset. And yeah, I think the only way that I would change that, because it kind of seems a little stalkerish now that I think about it, the only way I would change that entire paragraph, which is still my favorite, is I would include that they were friends for 6 months while he was getting to know them. So maybe even not, I did my own research into them. Maybe I got to know them as a friend for 6 months before I got the nerve to ask them. That's how I would change that line. And then I feel like it's more powerful at that point and shows that they do their due diligence, but it's not to the extreme of their parents who are cyber stalking. So I found a lot of joy in this story, and there's a lot of things that I would edit, and I would ask for a lot of help from sensitivity readers, but I still think the meat and potatoes are there. I hope you find joy in whatever passion you have every single day, every week, every month, and every year.